You're listening to the Global Travel Channel podcast show, a podcast that shares travel experiences from across the world. Your host for the show is Mark Philpott, ex-global corporate executive, philanthropist, publisher, filmmaker, sportsman, and serial traveler. Mark sits down with guests from across the world and talks about their up-close and personal travel experiences. And we get to understand how travel changes people's lives. Here's your host, Mark Philpott.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. It's great to be here with you all again, and thank you very much for joining us. If you haven't come across the Global Travel Channel until now, welcome. It's your first time here. It's exciting. We have a lot of great stuff on here. We have today our food series. We also have a well-being series, and we have all these amazing guests from around the world who talk about their incredible travel adventures. So you get lots of different things here on the Global Travel Channel. Now, if you love our show, don't forget to subscribe and find us on all those wonderful podcast hosting sites like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, all the rest. There's so many of them I can't list them, but they are all on our website. So check it out at www.globaltravelchannel.com. As I said, I get to interview amazing people all around the world, and today we're doing the third in the episode of our food series. I have an international chef on board, and what we're doing is going through recipes that are being sent in to us by our listeners. Yes, you have the opportunity to send your recipes to us, and we will go through them here on the show once a month with our food series. And it's time now to introduce the chef back on the show again. So let's go and do that. And it's a very warm welcome back to the Global Travel Channel podcast show food episode to Dion Taylor. Dion, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I love being involved.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Can you believe we're up to our third month of doing this already?
I know. How fast is it flying past?
Too fast for me, and every time it comes around I think, oh gosh, I've got to spend another time talking to Dion about his amazing food recipes, which are going to make me absolutely mouth-watering. So last time I got some great feedback on our Mexican dish. People were absolutely thrilled with that, mate. So you did a fantastic job in prepping that and making it look good. Didn't it look good online? It was really tasty looking.
So exciting. And it's funny, my wife's waiting for the next one as well. She wants to see that recipe become part of our staple household diet.
Whoa, there you go. There you go. So Luisa, if you're listening over there in Mexico, thank you for sending us the recipe. You've changed the Taylor household in Bundaberg.
It's as easy as that. Keep them coming in, folks.
Now, for people that haven't joined us before in the food series, Dion Taylor is a chef in the beautiful Bundaberg city, which is on Australia's east coast, north of Brisbane by about 4 hours. And Dion is taking the absolute pleasure in preparing some of the amazing recipes we're being sent by you, our listeners, from around the world. So if you're sitting out there today listening to the show and you're proud of a particular dish that comes from your country, why don't you send it to us, and Dion will be more than happy to give it a go, and we can share it with all our listeners around the world. So there you go. There's a challenge for all the listeners today. Give us your recipes. We'll put them on the show, or we'll do our best we can, because we've got more recipes than we've got time for at the moment, Dion. But I'm sure we'll do our part. Now, today, well, first of all, tell us the country that we're visiting today. We're
visiting Belgium.
Belgium.
I know it's for me. Belgium is all about beer and chocolate. This dish couldn't be further from it. This is a lovely, clean, fresh, exciting dish. And I sort of, when I was looking at the recipe, I went, "Wow, I've been caught off guard here. I genuinely thought we'd be going rich and heavy and full body. Well, we got the flip of this, and we've got a lovely, fresh dish that's perfect for a breakfast."
Brilliant. Now, before we get into that, have you spent any time in Belgium?
I did. I was in Belgium, again, a fairly long time ago now, but I've got fond memories of traveling around, and for me it was about the chocolate, and it was also about the beer. I really enjoyed that. The Belgium, I guess the whole country vibe for me is their passion. They're a very happy, smiley group of people, and I think because they do have access to so many amazing commodities, that for a international person traveling through there, I had my eyes wide open looking at, wow, we've got all this amazing, real fresh key ingredients, and the weather was amazing. I had an amazing time with the people that I was traveling with, and probably a few hazy moments, or hazy mornings, I should say, after some lovely beer tavern experiences.
Did you get out to the tourist spots of Bruges and Ghent? Did you have a look around those places?
Bruges and Brussels were some of my favorites.
Yep.
I love going through there. And again, like the jewelry in Belgium was also quite interesting. I didn't realize how affluent Belgium was at that time.
A lot of diamonds in Antwerp. That's where a lot of the diamonds come from, is out of Antwerp.
And they're exciting. Like it's almost to me, it was like a flip side of going through like the Arab countries where they're all about, here you go, it's all very showy. Whereas in Belgium, it was like, it was all there and all available, but it was very boutique. It was, let us hand make or custom make something for you. It was, you could have whatever you wanted, allow the time, allow the budget, and it is yours. It was exciting. I felt very underwhelmed financially. I thought, oh, I should have come here with $100,000 and I could have walked away feeling all glammed up. But I think really my overall experience of Belgium was, it's one of those places I believe you would want to go back time and time again. You want to explore the different seasons. Yeah. Because I went there and I went there twice. Once it was freezing cold, and then the next time I went back, I was like, I went from England to Belgium, and it was very, very pleasant. I was like, this is all right, okay, I could live here. Yeah. But on the flip side, those winters are cold.
They are indeed. Now, I had the pleasure of living in Brussels for 12 years, and you're right, it's an unknown quantity, Belgium, particularly from a food point of view. It's a melting pot of cultures. It's got 4 official languages as a country. And as a result of that, and not only as a result of the languages, but a result of its history, where it has a very strong Dutch influence in the north, and it has a French influence in the south, and in the centre there's a mixture of everything, plus a large African community as well. So I remember in the 12 years that I was living there, I think towards the end of my stay, I was still going to restaurants that I hadn't been to, finding new gems all over the place. It's that kind of place, you can spend a decade getting all the cuisine places under your belt. So highly recommend it. If you're out there listening today, you haven't been to Belgium, you've got a European trip planned for when we can all get out and about again, put Belgium on the list, because if you like food and you like drink, then it's almost heaven. That's what I would say.
And very progressive as well, wasn't it, Mark? I even doing some extra research behind the food cultural side of things for this recipe. It's like, wow, I had no idea the breadth of offerings that people were putting out there into the marketplace. It was exciting.
Yeah, great. So there we go. Belgium Tourism Commission, we've done a job for you today. Dion and I both recommend that you get over there and check out Belgique. It's a great place. Okay, Dion, tell us what the dish is today. What are you going to cook up for us?
Well, this one here is, I'll try my best with the pronunciations. You have to excuse me if I get it totally wrong. But the Asperge Blanchet à la Flamande.
Oh, à la Flamande. Blanchet. Fantastic. You did pretty well. You almost got it. So did you translate that into English for us?
Flemish asparagus.
Flemish asparagus. So there you go. So as I was just saying, this dish is from the north side of Belgium, the Flemish side of Belgium, and I would dare say, and someone's probably going to correct me on this, Karin, who sent us the recipe, by the way, from Belgium, you'll probably correct me on this, but I would say that it's an old farmer's dish, something that the farmers used to prepare back in the day. I'd say that's where its origins were. Did you find out anything, Dion, about it?
No, it was the only thing I did find out, the history of the dish. It was introduced as a way of being very mindful around lower cholesterol and clean eating. It was something that was done as part of rather than just having a heavy fried breakfast, this was the flip side of still having eggs and still incorporating some vegetables into their breakfast.
Well, I tell you what, a little thing about asparagus, because there's a lot of people out there that'll go, asparagus, yuck, I'm not going to eat that. But hang on a minute before you tune out. I'll tell you something. I used to be one of those people that absolutely detested asparagus. And recently I've changed my life style and my eating plans. And asparagus is now one of the things that I love the most. And if you're trying to look for a healthy lifestyle, asparagus is up there with one of the top foods that you can have as far as having a clean diet. So don't shy away from this just because we mentioned the word asparagus, and don't worry about your urine smelling, because it doesn't happen to everybody. Yeah.
The old aspartic acid trick.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. So Dion, what do we need first of all to get this dish made? What are our ingredients that we need to bring together?
Okay, so I guess depending on where you are in the world, so for our European neighbours, they're very likely going to be able to access white asparagus quite easily. Now, for those that aren't aware, there are generally two different types of asparagus grown in the world. We have white asparagus and green asparagus. Now, the major difference there is white asparagus is, instead of it being allowed to grow out of the ground, so it's like a little seedling and it's popped its head out, the difference is the green asparagus is allowed to grow all the way to maturity on top of the surface, whereas white asparagus is actually covered and not exposed to light.
Interesting.
So
Very
you can buy white asparagus in Australia and other, I guess, Western countries there as well. However, it's a lot more seasonal, it's a lot more expensive and a lot harder to access. So it really depends on where you are in the world as how you're going to trial this dish. And my suggestion would only be the variations between the white and the green is the white has a much more milder flavour. So it won't be quite as pungent with that asparagus flavour. It will more be a lot softer, whereas the green, and guess the colour differences there as well. So what I'm going to do, I have taken, so who was our guest that emailed this through?
Karin
from
Belgium.
What I did, Karin, is I actually took a little bit of a spin on this because we couldn't get the white asparagus. I then transferred that into the green asparagus, but everything else was very easy to access.
So I want to ask you about that, Dion, because as a chef in Australia and someone that's had international experience, when you're playing around with international dishes like this, do you sometimes find it hard to get the right ingredients of international dishes in particular?
Yes, it's even coming from obviously a hospitality background where we can access wholesale suppliers, it's a real supply and demand concern, particularly in regional areas. A lot of the metro areas is where you'll get a really good high-end boutique or gourmet food importer, where you're very likely going to be able to access things like truffles and all those really nice European sort of things. Whereas particularly in an Australian market, a lot of those high-end products they're not new to Australia, but they're new to mainstream Australia. So it's still very much a gourmet access or gourmet budget, depending on where you are in the world. But it is worth having a play. It is worth researching and trying to find these ingredients, particularly if it's the first time you've made them, because then you'll get a good understanding what the traditional side of that recipe is going to be all about. Yeah,
right. So, don't let it put you off if you can't find all the ingredients. There's substitutions out there. Dion, are you aware of any websites or apps that exist that actually focus on, substituting recipes with different ingredients?
No, actually, I haven't seen one, like a ready access one like that.
That'd be a good idea, wouldn't it?
It would be, I'm going to write that down, Mark. Quick, someone write that down. I guess what I spend a lot of time when we're transferring or translating, I should say, recipes from different languages. I often look at them. I have a few keywords that I can pick out of recipes, but then I have to go, well, let's use a translator to finish off the rest. But that only takes the ingredients, not necessarily the commodities.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was just thinking when you were talking before, wouldn't it be great to have an online repository of a place where you could go and had all the mainstream recipes there and had the substitutes, because it's a bit late when people are cooking in their kitchen. They can only grab what they've got within their pantry, I guess, right? Versus they could go down the shops and try and get something else. But it'd be nice to know up front, okay, I'm going to make this dish tomorrow night. If I can't find all the ingredients in my country, what can I put in it?
Yes, yeah, no, that has been one of the challenges, actually, I'd suggest, Mark, with these recipes coming through. It's been exciting to see that I would suggest a lot of these key ingredients that are being featured, I believe, are quite international. So we should be able to get the majority of our listeners really getting in amongst these recipes and just having some fun.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, let's go forward. So we've got our asparagus.
Yeah, so what we have, 5 ingredients for this recipe. It's a nice, easy recipe to do. 5 key ingredients: 2 bunches of white or green asparagus, 1 whole lemon. I personally used 4 eggs, but it did ask for 2. I just like eggs. And 75 grams of butter. Or if you didn't want to use butter, I'd suggest you could use like a Nuttelex or a non-dairy commodity. It would be similar consistency, slightly different flavor. And then we're going to use some flat parsley, a nice generous handful of flat parsley or curly leaf parsley. But again, if you don't have ready access to that, I would suggest something like some chives or something, spring onions, for example, would be a very close substitute.
Is this a dish that we're making and eating? It's not something we're going to store away for any period of time?
Yeah, this is a straight up. This is for me personally, it felt like an amazing breakfast dish.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would transfer beautifully into a brunch, and if you miss lunch, I think it'd be an awesome afternoon snack as well.
Oh, there you go. You can have multiple times throughout the day.
Very, and it was lovely and clean. I think you'll find this dish. There are 10 very quick, simple steps. So I would suggest this dish here. We should be getting a lot of photos from a lot of listeners saying that everyone's created this dish in no time.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, I'm just curious about the eggs. When you do add additional eggs, what does it do to the texture of the actual dish?
Well, the good thing with this one here, we actually end up boiling the eggs. So it's not as if you're using the egg so much as an emulsifier. It's not a thickening agent, or it's not part of the sauce per se. It's actually it seems to be the key protein for this dish.
Okay, cool. Okay, next step. What do we do after we've got our 5 ingredients together?
Okay, so again, I haven't cooked it this morning. I'm going to rearrange them slightly because it doesn't make a big difference personally in the kitchen. I just put my cooking spin on it to make it faster to create.
Right, okay.
So what we're going to do here is we're going to put our eggs into a pot of water, and we're going to boil the eggs. Now, the trick with boiled eggs, it doesn't mean you put them on the stove and then walk away and have a coffee, clean the boat, wash Oscar, go to town. It's hard-boiled eggs are 7 to 9 minutes, not 35 minutes, as I've seen some people try to cook them before.
Right.
Otherwise, you get that horrible grey colour inside, and it's just, if you're going to appreciate these eggs, use a good quality free-range egg, because you are just about to eat them. So let's love them with a little bit of respect, and we'll get it back in turn with the dish creation.
Now let's talk about eggs again for a second, because I know a lot of people are a little bit nervous when they buy eggs. What type of eggs do you buy to use in your dishes?
Personally, for us, both at home and even at the restaurant, we only use free-range eggs if it's something that we're going to be eating in a soft or raw state.
Right. Okay.
Please don't use caged eggs if you're not going to be cooking them in something like a cake or anything like that. You want to have these cooked at, because you're not necessarily cooking them to a hard stage, you have to appreciate that they've been fed well, the chickens that is, and also you're only eating a good quality product.
Yeah, okay, good. So free-range eggs, not caged eggs, everybody.
Correct.
Okay.
So first thing is, obviously, we're going to put our 2 eggs onto the stovetop with the water. We're going to bring the eggs up to boil, which again, around that 7 to 9 minutes. You do want them to be a medium to firm cook, so you want the yolks cooked all the way through. The reason being, and I'll jump to the final stage there of those eggs, just so you understand why, is because once the eggs have been peeled, we're going to chop them up into like a coarsely chopped boiled egg. So we don't want them to be runny, because it won't work. So while our eggs are on the stove and they're cooking along nicely, what we're going to do is we're going to work with our asparagus as our second step. So when you're looking at your asparagus, you obviously have the beautiful head of the asparagus, which is where you've got your tree-like component to the asparagus. And then the stalk element, what we're actually going to do is just grab a vegetable peeler, and again, we're going to take off just a fine layer. Don't dig in too deep with your peeler. And we're going to peel around the outer edge of the asparagus. Now, I believe personally, if you're using asparagus that's very young, which would mean it's quite thin, you may not need to peel it. So this could be a little bit of a cheat or a hack, depending on what word you want to use. If you're buying it and it's young and it's fresh, then don't peel it. If you're finding it sort of the same sort of thickness as your little finger, the asparagus, then it is nice to peel it back, because what it does is it takes away that first layer of that texturous element of the asparagus.
I was going to ask you about how do we tell the age of the asparagus. So the younger it is, the thinner it is, basically.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So you will find some supermarkets particularly will only stock the really thin asparagus. Now, I think really for retailers that are selling asparagus, the main thing you'll find if you're picking up a bunch of asparagus and it looks like a really sad bunch of carrots where they're all droopy,
Yep.
please don't choose those ones, put them back.
Yep.
Because they don't bounce back in this dish. You want them to be nice and fresh and crisp.
Or take them home, make them into a soup.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So we've pretty much gone through, and the only thing I would also suggest when you're looking at your asparagus, you'll see down towards the stalk end of the asparagus, I normally find that first 10 or 15 mil of the asparagus on the stalk end can be a little bit woody. So if you just trim that bit off as well, and then continue on with the peeling of the asparagus. And we peel.
Sorry, what
all
was
of it.
what was the volume of asparagus we've got again?
Oh, beg your pardon. So I personally did 2 bunches of asparagus
2 bunches, okay.
because we enjoy asparagus, and myself and my wife had this for breakfast this morning. So we, in essence, had 1 bunch of asparagus each,
Yeah.
which was about 8 spears of asparagus per person.
Okay, so the dish we're talking about at the moment is going to serve 2 people, is that right?
2 people, yeah, comfortably 2 people.
Okay, good.
So we've now got our asparagus peeled. Our eggs are probably almost ready now, which would mean that they've been on for around that 7 to 9 minutes. Once that is done, if you take them off the stove, drain off the hot water, and just pour some cold water back on them, because what that will help to do is to stop the cooking process so that your egg yolks don't continue to go into that murky grey stage, which we don't want them to go. And that it also helps to make them easier to peel. So that's another little hack that you can use if you need to.
Okay, good.
The fresher the egg, the easier they are to peel. And that's another little way you'll know how old your eggs are, is if you find them really, really hard to peel. Sometimes if you go back onto your packaging where you bought the eggs, it may mean that they're probably getting towards the end of their use-by date.
Do they actually, is it law that you have to put on an egg packet when the eggs were actually produced?
In Australia, they don't have the production or the lay date, they have the best before date.
Right, okay. Okay, so they could be whatever, we don't know, but they've
Yep.
got to be used by a certain time, obviously.
Yeah, I would imagine, to be fair, looking at the stuff that we normally get in through the wholesalers, they seem to be between 4 and 6 weeks if they've been refrigerated. I think personally this dish would be amazing if you have chickens in your backyard or on the top deck of your boat. Maybe that would be a fairly special way of having some fresh eggs.
They wouldn't survive with Oscar, mate, for a second.
Love it.
Okay.
So we've now got our peeled asparagus. What we're actually going to do there is we're going to put another pot of water on the stove with 3/4 filled with water. So just enough. What we're going to do here is we're going to blanch our asparagus, which means to partially cook. The key ingredient with this water is once you've got your water on there, put a generous serving of salt in the water. So you're probably looking for a good 1 or 2 teaspoons of salt during that cooking process. Now, I personally recommend cooking with salt rather than putting salt on top of your dish, if that makes any sense. Because what you find you do is, as your vegetables are cooking, or in this case, as our asparagus is cooking, we're getting a really nice seasoned product during that cooking process. So it's a really nice way of getting exactly what you want. To cook the asparagus, so the asparagus that I had was probably sort of in between the small asparagus and my pinky sort of size. So it's about a 3 or 4 minute cook. If you are unsure how to cook asparagus, you could always get like a small paring knife and just put it in the tip of the asparagus just to see if it goes in nice and easily. Because the asparagus itself is not going to be, you don't want it limp and brown or anything like that, or overcooked. You still want it to be firm because it is the hero of this dish. But approximately 3 or 4 minutes would be good. Now, once the asparagus has had that cooking time, the best thing to do is drain that water off. It's really important with green vegetables not to leave them in hot water because they will continue to cook, but they'll also lose their colour. So after our cooking time, drain the asparagus off, just set it aside and don't put it in the fridge, just leave it on the bench there beside your workstation.
Done.
Okay, now next stage, this is really the simple part of the whole recipe, to be honest. We're going to get a large frying pan, large enough that it will hold your asparagus spears. So it doesn't need to be big enough that you're putting a whole pig in there or anything or else like that. It's just big enough that your asparagus spears will fit in there. And what we're going to do, we are going to add approximately 75 grams of butter. Now, the butter itself, I would recommend using unsalted butter because again, you don't want to have a heavy amount of salt in this dish because we've already blanched our asparagus in salt. Another layer on top may end up being too much.
Are you someone that typically tries to underdo the salt in all of your dishes versus putting too much in?
I'm probably one of those really particular chefs, Mark. I like my seasoning to be just right so that at the table experience, it doesn't need to be added. And I must admit, I love it. There's some family members, I won't say who they are because they will listen to this podcast and I'll get a belting. But the challenge I set to them is taste it first, and then if you need it, then you can add your salt and pepper on top. Instead of that automatic reach, where's the salt and pepper? You haven't tasted it yet.
Yeah. Leave it off the table, I say. I always leave it off the table, and then people will wake up halfway through their meal and go, oh, I didn't put any salt on my food, you know.
I think you're right. If they can see it, they want it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we've got the unsalted butter going.
Yep, so we've got our fry pan onto a high heat. We're going to add our butter into that pan. So 2 stages of this is we're going to melt the butter. As it starts to melt, you'll see you want to make sure that let it melt all the way through. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add the juice of 1 lemon. So it is the juice only. There's no rind or anything else that goes in there. So cut your lemon in half, squeeze it straight into your butter. And then what you'll find will happen is the lemon juice and the butter, there's a little bit of an emulsion that starts to take place. If you just get a whisk and whisk those 2 ingredients together, you get like a really nice foamy buttery sauce with that lemon back end on it as well. And it is beautiful. It's like, oh, that was a really easy butter sauce, but that same sauce would be perfect for fish, but in this sense we're going to use it with our asparagus. So what we now have is we've got our butter and lemon juice together. We've been whisking that until you've got a nice, looks like a foamy sort of buttery sauce. We've got our blanched asparagus sitting on the side. Now let's jump back over to our eggs. So we've got our hard-boiled eggs. What we're going to do here is we're now going to peel the eggs, take off all the shell, and then as you've got your eggs on your chopping board, grab a sort of that medium to large cooking knife, and all I did this morning was just slice them nice and finely one way, turn the sliced egg the other way, and then just effectively coarsely chop the egg. The good thing with this dish, you don't need precision cutting. We're not looking for a chiffonade or anything fancy.
Yep.
It's a rough chopped boiled egg.
Right.
Nice and clean and easy, this one. What we're going to do now is, now that we have our chopped eggs, we're going to add them to our butter and lemon sauce, and just mix it together using a spoon or a serving spoon that you're going to then dish that egg up with. The only other thing we're missing now is we spoke about some flat parsley or curly parsley a little bit earlier, or whatever your green herb is going to be. Just roughly chop your parsley and then add that to the egg and the lemon butter sauce.
How much parsley are we using?
A good generous, if you're working with fresh parsley, which would be my recommendation, whatever a good handful of fresh parsley is, because all it's really doing is giving it a great level of colour, and it's also giving it a heap of other vitamins and minerals into your dish as well. So what we've got now, looking into your fry pan, is you've got your sauce in there, your chopped egg in there, and your green chopped parsley in there as well. We've mixed that all together. Now, the one thing I would do here is just check your seasoning. If you feel that you do need some salt and pepper, add it to your dish there now. Quickly taste the seasoning before you serve it, and then it's a matter of just getting it all organized for spooning over your asparagus. So what I did this morning, just as a bit of a sideline, I actually had mine with some organic sourdough, because we've got a awesome old school bakery here in town where we get some beautiful sourdough. And for me, breakfast is my favorite part of the day, and I wanted this to be a real hero breakfast. So I just had one piece of toasted sourdough with nothing else on it. I then put my asparagus, the blanched asparagus, over my sourdough. And then this is where you get your magic sauce, our lemon butter and egg sauce, and just spoon that over the top of the asparagus. And oh my goodness, really, that is it. It's the whole dish in itself. It'd be a little bit like some people love bacon and eggs for breakfast. Well, this is an egg and asparagus version of that simplicity, and it was amazing. It looked appealing, the color was there, and the asparagus, while it's not in season at the moment in Australia, it was beautiful to have and appreciate that asparagus flavor in the morning.
Well, there you go, Karin, if you're listening in, and I'm sure you are, from Belgium today to Dion. You've made this guy very impressed with this dish. You obviously never had it before, Dion.
No, never. And here's me in my head going, I might put this one on the restaurant menu. We could do this as a special.
Wow, brilliant. Yeah, weekend lunch, breakfast special, yeah, or something like that.
It was a 5-ingredient, while I sort of think 10 steps is probably too much realistically. Yeah. As you go through this dish yourself, you'll work out a way that you can potentially have your eggs boiling, putting your asparagus into the boiling egg water, and there'll be some cheats and some hacks that you'll work to make this dish super quick and super simple. But it was very, very tasty, and thank you for sending in, Karin. I'm really looking forward to having it again.
Brilliant. Now, one of the feedbacks I got from one of our listeners from our last show, they asked me to make sure I ask you each episode, what was the most difficult or most crucial part of putting this particular recipe together? So was there something here that you'd really ask everybody to keep their minds on? I guess it's the eggs, yeah? Don't let them go too long.
Yeah, don't overcook your eggs. And the only other thing I'd suggest as well is when you're making your lemon butter sauce, just make sure that pan is hot but not jumping hot. Like, you don't want to put the butter in. There's a French term called beurre noisette, which is nut brown butter. You don't want to burn your butter.
Right, okay.
So all we're doing is melting the butter, adding the lemon juice, and just making it nice and light and fluffy using a whisk. So not excessive heat, just a nice moderate heat to melt it, and then add your sauce in there as well.
So don't go off and wash the dog or the boat while the butter's going on, right?
This is a 5-minute focus, Mark. Have you got it?
Okay, very, very good. Now, would you recommend having anything with it, like a couple of strips of bacon or a couple of sausages, or do you think it just does itself justice by itself?
I don't know that I'd add a meat protein to this dish. Because you do have that lemon in there, it does have a level of acidity to the back end of this dish. I think it might be tasty if you had maybe some oyster mushrooms or some button mushrooms. That would be quite impressive. That would be quite yummy. Or maybe some oven roasted truss tomatoes or something like that, just to give it that another little layer of sweetness from the tomatoes as well. That could be beautiful as well.
Okay, good. So all you guys out there listening today, and if you're wanting to impress your good lady on a weekend for breakfast or any day for breakfast, get out of bed and make her this particular dish, because it'll probably blow her socks off and she'll wonder how the heck you found out about this dish from Belgium.
And only 5 ingredients. You could probably actually just do a quickie sneak look into the fridge and go, 5 ingredients, that's happening tomorrow, folks. That's the challenge. Let's make this tomorrow.
Isn't that wonderful? You can put a dish like this together and get so much out of it in terms of such less number of ingredients. It's brilliant.
And now I feel like I've been back to Belgium again. I'm all excited and filled back with love.
Fantastic, Dion. Thank you very much. So check out the recipe online. We're going to stick the recipe up there. Dion's taking some amazing photographs of the dish that he prepared this morning for you all to have a look at, and we've already got some people salivating online over that, Dion, so they're waiting to listen to how to put this together. So folks, if you're listening in all over the world, we want to have recipes from you. So send us your recipes. Doesn't matter what country you're in. It could be something that you grew up on as a kid. That might be one of your favorite recipes. It might have been something you had while you traveled somewhere. Send us over, and Dion's going to be very happy to get those done. And when you come to Australia, you've got to go and visit Dion at his wonderful HSG Gardens restaurant in Bundaberg, just 4 hours north of Brisbane. Bundaberg's a beautiful region, gateway to the Great Barrier Reef, but also many other things. But the most important thing, it's a great area for food. And this man is the man. So make sure you come and visit when you come to Australia. Dion, it's been great having you on the show again today. Thank you for your time. Thanks for making this dish. And we'll see you back next month for number 4.
Always my pleasure. Looking forward to it.
You've been listening to Dion Taylor preparing the Flemish white asparagus. That's a recipe that was sent to us by our listener Karin Van Den Eede from Belgium. Thank you, Karin, for sending that in. Hope you all enjoy it. Get into the kitchen, get those 5 ingredients together, and let us know how you go. We'd love to have some feedback on your version of that recipe, and maybe you throw something else in there as well into the mix. Now, if you're listening and you want to send us your recipe from your countries, please do so. We'll give them on to Dion and he'll cook them up in his restaurant and have them ready for the show. We'd love to get as many recipes from around the world as we could. If you love the show, don't forget to head over to the Global Travel Channel podcast show's website, www.globaltravelchannel.com. You'll find the rest of the food series there. You'll find a well-being series with Jessica and Natalie, and you'll find all of the amazing guests that we've had on the show today. So enormous amounts of exciting travel news and travel experiences that will give you blood rushes, that's for sure. So head on over there and check it out. If you like our content, don't forget to tell someone about it. Word of mouth is the greatest way of growing a podcast, so we'd appreciate if you can actually get out there and tell people about this particular show. Okay, well, that's it for me for this particular episode. I look forward to being back again really soon with another episode. Until then, my name is Mark Philpott, and I wish you all a very happy and safe week ahead.